Joining us now for our second conversation on the program is Public Affairs Analyst Lester Wilcox. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, let's begin with our headline story for today, the 2-hour phone call between Chinese President Xi Jinping and US President Joe Biden, particularly over Taiwan. What do you make of this conversation?
Well, Taiwan has always been a sore point in the within U.S.-China relation because U.S. always is trying to recognize Taiwan as a sovereign country, while the Chinese sees Taiwan as an integral part of the Chinese mainland, and so there has been that tension or whatever we might call it between the two countries. So talks are ever ready because of all those nitty-gritty issues. And Biden and Jinping is not the first leaders to talk about Taiwan. There will always be that conflict, and they will keep discussing about it. Now, for them to have a 2-hour discussion, that means there are specific issues on discourse, and most of them borders about trade, Taiwan independence, supply of arms, and all whatnot. So I see progress for two leaders to sit down and have a good discussion on. I see progress on all fronts, whatever the issues that presently that is cropping up between the two nations. I see progress because there's always been this suspicion with each other as to how Taiwan administration should go. And the Taiwanese wants to remain independent, while the Chinese want the Taiwan to become part of them, just like Hong Kong, which is like a two-country, one system, and a two-country, one system governance. So that is what they want for Taiwan. But I think the U.S. is resisting it, the Taiwanese is resisting it, and the U.S. is always been in favor of the Taiwanese at all points, no matter the discussions that they have.
One of the reasons for the discussion being on Taiwan is because there are fears of China invading Taiwan, just like you have mentioned the two country one system. But one of the major issues was also the proposed visit of the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. Do you think the visit will or should go ahead?
Well, certainly the visit will go ahead, from my estimation. Since the advent of the new world program, the new world embarrassment of Russia invading Ukraine, the issue of Taiwan and China has always been in the front burner. Yes, there has been suspicion that one day China will follow suit like the Russia to invade Taiwan. But of course, that is also why the U.S. is setting up strong military and cooperation with Taiwan, and also having serious engagement with China. With respect to the visit of of Nancy Pelosi, I do not see that visit being called off, except there are some issues that could be traded off, or there are issues that the U.S. is ready to compromise with. The U.S. stand with respect to Taiwan has always been very straight. Taiwan is a sovereign nation, and therefore they will protect Taiwan. So they have not, yes, once in a while they have given in to, maybe when they also need something from China, they're giving to a few compromises with respect to Taiwan from the U.S., but they have not hidden their stance. So if the House Speaker wants to visit and it's a cause of concern for Taiwan, and which will have caused that discussion, I don't see that as a big call, except, of course, there are some issues that are not yet in the open with respect to that discussion that will make that visit be cancelled. The U.S. will always maintain their dominance, when we want to maintain their presence, and always give the Taiwanese people the impression or the moral boost that they are with them 100%. More so in this time when there is a threat. I've been coming from what Russia did, and I said, so every of these countries that U.S. have interest in will always want that guarantees and protection. So the U.S. will never shall in that discussion. But I think that visit will hold, and maybe some of the activities might be moderated. But the U.S., I don't see the U.S. at this point canceling a visit of the high-ranking official to Taiwan on account of China's opposition. I don't see it so.
Well, let's talk about the grain deal. It seems to be holding in spite of accusations by both Russia and Ukraine that there have been breaches by the other side. Do you think it will work out?
Certainly, the Green Deal will work out. Thank you. Sorry for that. Certainly, the Green Deal will work out because it's not just about Ukraine and Russia. It's about the entire world. I listened to your other guest, and he made a very, very valid point. The fact remains that the war within Ukraine and Russia has brought untold hardship, economic and political and economic hardship, and food security has been vastly threatened. It's not only in Ukraine or in Europe, in Africa. We know Egypt today is suffering because Egypt imports a lot of grain from Ukraine, Somalia the same, even Nigeria. You remember, just this is the third time this year bakers are increasing the price of bread, all on account of the fact that the raw material, which is grain, it's the supply is not adequate, and there's blockage for import, and some other issues. So it's a world thing, and that's why the UN is actively involved, especially through the World Food Program, actively involved. So the deal will certainly hold. It's just that the both parties are flexing and seeing how they can get the best out of the deal. Russia, yes, Russia do not care in all content. Russia do not give a damn. But the fact is that Ukraine and the world needs the grain to come out of Ukraine. And Ukraine, it's a world producer of grain, and a lot of countries depend on Ukraine grain to survive. So there's going to be a lot of hardship, which is already being caused now. The African countries, European countries, up to us here in Nigeria, we are feeling the
So
pinch of the war.
I was going to ask on
Yeah,
that, Africa being greatly impacted by this. But we see Russia and the West, represented currently by France, cotton countries in Africa. We've had Sergei Lavrov on the continent. We've had the French president himself on the continent, asking for support for their markets, diplomatic support, and energy supplies. What should these countries, African countries, now be asking for in return?
unfortunately, Africa has been a pawn in any chess game for the West. Because over the years, African leaders, Africa has refused to grow and be a power that would determine or that would direct world affairs. So, and for me, it's quite sad and unfortunate that all the time Africa is a pawn in the chess game of the world. At this point, Africa seems not to have too much influence. Rather, to whoever is the highest bidder or who is the most beautiful bride. Russia has made attempts in the past to woo Africa because they've had African Russia meeting, summit, and all whatnot. They've tried to woo Russia, just like China did, and just like China did to woo Africa by building the AU headquarters, loans. Russia also stepped up, and now the West is discovering that these other powers are trying to take over their territory, which is Africa, and so they are also coming up with their diplomatic moves, economic moves, and all whatnot. So, like I said, Africa is always a pawn, but at this point there is stark, there is Africa is facing stark reality of hunger. Africa is facing high reality of economic depression. Look at our naira. Our naira today is over 700. It's not because there is any other thing that the country has done wrong economically, but because the world event is impacting negatively on the economy of Africa.
Indeed.
Remittances are poor. What do you call it? Sales of crude oil and exports are poor. Just and not only Nigeria, every African country is pinching it because when when two elephants fight, they say the grass suffer, and Africa remain as the grass.
Mm.
Unfortunately and sadly, Africa remain as the grass over the years, and only God knows. Sorry for my using religion here. Only God knows how Africa can come out of this debacle and be a force to reckon with. Even with all the corruption of Africa, we choose to remain as the grass when the elephants fight. But I
All
think
right.
African nations can also brace up themselves and cut a good deal. Now they have a opportunity of cutting a good deal for themselves. Right now they are like the bride that the two sides are looking out for. So they also should have some pride. Although yes, home backlashes from home is not favorable to governments in Africa, but they also need to stick to their guns and cut a good deal for their people at this point because the two sides needs them. But Russia needs support right now. Russia is running out of support. Europeans have turned against them. Most Asian countries are not in there. So now Africa is the only place they can look up to. So they have a position to cut a good deal for themselves, so that going forward they can also see how they can become a power force in the world, in the world politics.
All right, then. Thank you so much for those analysis, Mr. Alester Wilcox, our public affairs analyst. Thank
It's
you.
always my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I'm grateful.